might just be the right call. You know, as you said, for this tournament, great, but I think reading that a lot of players were probably going to bring aggro isn't exactly a long stretch, right? You know, like with the power of the aggro decks in Wild, not too much of a big guess there. So maybe it was just like, yeah, I just don't need Vine Cleaver to be able to take out these aggro decks. We are getting into game 1 of Alb versus MeknugetZz. So it's going to be the Shaman on Shaman action. And there's going to be a lot of going face. Well, I say a lot of going face. A lot of the early stuff is going to be trading, but this game's going to be a quick one, I feel. This one normally doesn't drag out too long.
I'm inclined to disagree a little bit. If the start is lopsided and one player snowballs, then yeah, it can be very, very quick. But classically, Aggro Shaman, and now Aggro Shaman as we see it in Wild, is actually very much a resource battle. Like, you actually have to trade so much because the power card from your opponent at all times is Flame Tongue Totem, right?
Yeah.
The one turn you go face and they punish you with a Flame Tongue Totem, that's when you lose the board and you can't race anymore. So for me, actually commonly, the way I see Aggro Shaman mirrors going is it's trade, 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 and then it becomes a resource battle. It's actually who has the higher value cards in the late game.
Yeah, I was thinking with in Wild, the addition of Crackle is such a good removal tool instead of having to trade, that you can actually use that for, excuse me, just for 2 mana, to be able to actually just, you know, like remove one awkward minion.
Sure.
And the second you know, sort of remove a minion for 2 mana that gets you ahead on board, you do kind of hit that snowball point a lot of the time.
Bloodsail Corsair is going to land here. MeknugetZz thought long and hard about whether he wanted to hold on to it here to snipe down a J-Claws or even the Hammer of Twilight that I think every list in this tournament is running. You see now the J-Claws is getting drawn, which is a potential punish, but Alb has the ability to just front-load the 2 1/3s first and then get the additional buff from the J-Claws on his Tunnel Trog as well.
Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. There's not really a lot that punishes too hard outside of an exact Flame Tongue, though, which would be a little bit rough.
It's always, yeah, Flame Tongue is almost always a punish unless you have taken control, and Alb is going to hold back here.
I think I like this a little bit because this gives options, right? You can potentially, you can potentially, you know, Maelstrom next turn if you want. You can go Trog into coin Claws. You can coin out Feral Spirit. This gave Alb the most options to be able to work with, and now he can actually clear up the 2 minions on the board. I say minions, you know, 2 minions and a totem. Totem is technically a minion, of course, but now he can actually get this down, and suddenly Young Priestess making the Tunnel Trog a 1/4. Actually pretty nice.
Small point, but really nice sequencing from Alb as well. He led with the Maelstrom Portal, which then meant if he hit Arcane Anomaly, if he hit Mana Worm, then the coin coming down would buff it out. And also it just allowed him to react to the minion that he got. And as you said, once the Young Priestess hit, he's like, well, hell yeah, I'm coining this Tunnel Trog as a 1/4.
Yeah, and still next turn there is options. Jade Claws would be you know, slightly off curve, but still can be used as just a 1 minion removal if need be. But even just Feral Spirits, that... Do you remember in Standard, the Shaman meta, where it was just every tournament we cast felt like Shaman, 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 Shaman? At least for me, not for you. I did that on purpose.
It's going for the record, boys.
Shaman, 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 Shaman. And Feral Spirit really felt like the card that pushed a lot of matchups over the edge, because it was very difficult to deal with outside of a Flame Tongue on a board you already had.
Yeah. Young Priestess is just continuing to do work here, though. That's the second buff it's played already, and as a free minion, just a token minion from the Maelstrom Portal, it's such a huge advantage in this position, just progressively pulling minions out of range of Maelstrom Portal, out of range potentially of Jade Lightning in another turn or so. And now MeknugetZz is going to have to fight back with Flame Wreath Faceless, but Alb just has the tempo push here with a Flame Wreath Faceless of his own, a Jade Lightning, or now even Flame Tongue is an incredible pickup in this spot.
Yeah, MeknugetZz play then I actually do like. If you start going, okay, you know, Jade Lightning, and
sure.
you will easily fall behind. The only way you could have started to battle back over the course of multiple turns was that Flame Wreath. But as you said, when your opponent answers back and he's constantly ahead, this Feral Spirit's just immortal at this point. Maybe not against Flame Wreath, but yeah, you know, like this just propels you ahead even more and even more because that Flame Wreath is protected behind the 2 taunts. And next turn can be Jade Lightning. Oh, it won't. It's overloaded, right? So it will just be Jade Lightning as an option, or Flame Tongue and Hero Power.
Yep.
It's always tricky to see the overload on the top player.
It's true. Speaking of Jade Lightning, though, it is enabling a little bit of a swing back to MeknugetZz in this spot. But yeah, as you mentioned, just the additional tempo has meant that this matchup is playing out a little bit more like you suggested than the way I was going to see it go.
Told
because
you.
one play. You remember that analysis segment we did a minute ago about not being results-oriented, Raven?
Nope.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, it's just been that snowbally game. MeknugetZz did have the Flame Tongue early as well, which is usually such a key card. But Alb sequencing, the way he actually held back the coin actually worked out in his favor because, as you said, it allowed him to react with Maelstrom Portal instead of being locked into that J-Claws line.
And now MeknugetZz is like, okay, please die. Would have loved that to be cleared up a little bit easier. But Crackle and Jade Lightning going in there is just okay. I end up kind of contesting the board.
Right, and here's after, once Alb has got into this position where he's pushed so much damage, even if he didn't have a strong board development play here, the fact his list is actually a little bit more better equipped at doing the resource game as well, because Alb has double Azure Drake in his list, whereas MeknugetZz only has the singular one. So even a late game resource battle was likely to come down in Alb's favor as well, but he's just continuing to dominate the board in this spot.
Yeah, Azure Drake is, one of the quieter removals from Standard, I think, compared to some of the other cards that have been removed. But there are a lot of decks I wish I could play Azure Drake in, and you know what? It's pretty much all of them. The card is just great for that value game, a reasonable sized body, and the spell damage really helps here. And now double Jade Lightning in hand for Alb. It has been for a while, means that he can just set up a turn like this, right? He's just like, well, double Jade Lightning's great, and the longer you can hold on to it in these matchups, the better the card becomes, because it continues to be either minion removal if you need it to be later on, or you can just get them.
Well, in this spot, it's just a guaranteed lethal.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is if you use that on turn 4, then your options become more limited later on.
Sure.
But by holding the Jade Lightnings, it means that if you need to battle for the board, you can, or if you need to just set up good old face, you can as well. And Alb, he's going to take the first game in the Shaman Mirror versus MeknugetZz here in the semi-final number 2, the Hearthstone Wild Open.
Yeah, and as Frodan mentioned going in, this is kind of the tale as old as time as far as competitive Hearthstone goes, which is a battle between Europe and North America coming down to it here, and it's 1-0 on the board for Alb and for Europe in this position.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about the two Shaman decks that are very similar, and we can check out the differences between Wild Shaman and Standard Shaman.
Yes, so for the standard Shaman, you are more based around spreading the board wide and then looking to go with that Bloodlust strategy or just making a ton of stats on board with Evolve. So although they're both aggressive decks, the wild version of aggro Shaman has the ability to just put more of a consolidated board presence into individual overstatted minions. 4 mana 7/7, 2 mana 3/4, etc. And you just dominate the board in different ways. They're both very snowbally decks. They're both capable of ending the game very, very quickly. But the additional power cards that you have available in Wild allow you to play a more straightforward linear strategy. And when I say linear, I mean just one straight line going directly to your opponent's face.
Yeah, and the Wild style of Shaman is actually just also limiting the fact that there's like no mana tides. There's actually not much late game unless you're against a similar style deck. You kind of do just go for it and hope. But we are swiftly moving on to game number 2. Alb locking in the Paladin. MeknugetZz going for the Shaman once again. Let's bear in mind, this is Conquest. You have to win with each one of your decks to move on and win the series.
Yeah, so this Paladin deck basically farms control almost always in most positions.
The style, not the player.
Correct. You have far too many ways to just continue to reload boards. You beat numerous AoEs. You push huge amounts of damage as soon as any board state sticks. So when you're bringing it to a tournament lineup, or even when you're teching it to try and climb to high legend in ladder, you really have to consider your tech choices as to what you're doing against aggro. There's multiple ways you can do that. You can use Zombie Chows. You can use Galacca Crawlers to more specifically focus on Pirate Warrior. You can go Wicker Flame Burn Bristle for a bit more stability. Alb has gone for the latter options of those. He's playing Galacca Crawler and the Wicker Flame in his list. No Zombie Chows, though.
Yeah, now what I will say about Galacca Crawler and teching for Pirate Warrior on ladder, normally teching...
Good plan, right?
Yeah, well, normally teching for a single deck on ladder is not the best idea, unless for some reason that one day you're like, nearly 50% that deck. In Wild, you are nearly 50% Pirate Warrior against, so you know what? Teching against it seems good. It's normally the correct play. You either play Pirate Warrior or a deck you think it can beat Pirate Warrior. And this is one of the tough ones to Paladin. I think you do need to tech it. You can't really just play what would be deemed the standard list, which is much more anti-control than aggro.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as Pirate Warrior if you're just playing, as you said, the standard build of the Doodadin, because generally Aggro Shaman does have to fight for board a little bit early on, and you are kind of capable of contesting that. Earlier qualities, obviously Muster for Battle is a great card if they don't have Maelstrom Portal. There's a lot of ways that you can just stay in it for a few turns, just as the Doodadin in this spot. So I don't think it's as bad as Pirate Warrior by any means. Pirate Warrior, I think, is the toughest matchup for this deck, and it's probably the one thing stopping this deck from just being completely dominant in the format, because everything else seems just fine.
Okay, well, what isn't fine, in my opinion, is the power of Flame Tongue Totem, as it allows just some great trades here, pushing for extra damage. And MeknugetZz, yeah, I was going to say, has to actually think about if you leave these 1/1s on, not just because, oh, you know, does Consecrate plus 1/1 trade or anything like that. It's more, what if this gets buffed? What if it gets adapted?
Right.
What if, you know, there are so many issues with leaving this, specifically the Silverhand recruits on the board.
So tough call for Alb in that spot. Took the extra damage on his face to preserve a 1/1 on the board. And now that 1/1 is a potential 3/3 next turn's worth of tempo, which would then allow him to trade with an Azure Drake in this spot. But if Azure Drake comes down, is it not a true silver turn for you anyway?
Yeah.
I think maybe there was a potential there to not take the damage on face.
Yeah, I also think if the 3/3 then gets to trade with the Azure Drake with the weapon swing,
You take
well,
more.
then you're taking more damage,
Right.
and then you will just die. Even in standard, you die versus things like this. Never mind when you start throwing Crackle in the mix, which is even more scary to go up against. So, yeah, I'm not sure about that. Going into a Tarium turn, I'm with it, you know, because then your 3/3 will kill the opponent's 3/3.
Right, that's very, very different.
Yeah, so I'm there, I'm with it. But going into the Quartermaster turn, especially when Quartermaster's weak versus this deck anyway, not its effect, but it as a minion, you're saying, okay, I'm going to finish the board with a 2/5. Like, is that really going to catch you up in this game?
Yeah, I did wonder quite what MeknugetZz' plan here was here for a second. He was picking up Feral Spirit and looking like he wanted to play that here, but now with just this Jade Lightning turn to the face, it means
like,
he has Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt on the following turn for 13 damage. There is no additional healing that Doodadin can use beyond that True Silver Champion to go back up to 11, so I was about to potentially call out another slightly sketchy MeknugetZz moment, but he caught himself correctly in the end.
Yeah, and honestly, you know, you might actually just laugh at me at this point, but which wouldn't be anything new. But it's actually, you know, it's actually easy to slip into autopilot, right? And you're like, okay, well, Feral Spirit is great on this board, and you know, it will get me further into the game. And then go, oh wait, if I just do this randomly to face, I set up lethal with just more and more burn. And if you're not that used to just continually looking for those points of damage and the damage over turns, it is easy to say, well, Feral Spirit looks good, so I'll just play it. But he didn't go for it, so it's fine.
That's called playing aggro, Raven. Looking for damage over the course of a number of turns, especially when it comes towards 6, 7, 8,
I know that, okay.
Yeah,
yeah, so that was a pretty cool game there as MeknugetZz evens it up. But I believe Frodan and Kibble have a few words to say about that game.
Brian, there's a moment in that game that really stuck out to the rest of us here, and it was go back to game number 2 with Paladin versus the Shaman. We could take a look. An opportunity to use Consecration here. Just go ahead and walk me through some of the important moments of this turn.
Yeah, so we saw MeknugetZz here debating exactly what he wanted to do with the damage from his Bloodcell Corsair. He was deciding whether he wanted to kill one of the minions, and ultimately decides to go to face here. This means that this leaves up a Silverhand Recruit that allows Consecration to pretty much clear off his entire board. And you can say, oh, he got punished by Consecration here, but as we saw toward the end of the game, he needed that damage to enable him to get his opponent into burn range. So lots of people will look at a situation like that and think, what can I make for the best play in terms of what the board state is? But he recognized his win condition, given the state of his hand, was to just get damage to his opponent's face.
Right, and given the fact that, you know, if he wasn't able to end the game that turn, we've seen actually even just the previous series that your opportunity could slip away from you. If you didn't win that turn, who knows if your opponent picked up healing or some way to pressure you and you lose the game because of it. And as a result, MeknugetZz has tied up the series 1 game apiece as we head back over to Raven and Sottle.
Yeah, and it's a pretty cool point there, and you know, similar to what we were saying as well, it's just important to know exactly what push you can get, right? You know, how much you go for as and when, especially as an aggro deck, and these players knowing the lists of their opponents as well, knows that there was just the Rag Light Lord, as a potential.
Which was way too late.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As a potential healing out.
Right.
But he just said, "You're not even going to get there, friend."
Yeah, I actually think the more interesting part of that turn was the choice of how he allocated the 1/1 and the weapon attack, right? Because we saw it come down to just a straight burn setup. Alb tried to protect his board state, but we saw the game quickly not be defined by board states. It just got defined by health totals, which Alb could have engineered in his favor as well.
Yeah, and we're getting into a game that's going to be defined by face. MeknugetZz is going to go onto the Pirate Warrior, and Alb is going to be going on his Paladin again.
I'll define your face, Raven.
You would love to.
I define it as beautiful.
Hey, thanks, mate. Too kind, too kind. This opening hand, though, for MeknugetZz, you know, pre-mulligan, of course, it doesn't really look great to me. It kind of looks good.
Wait, what? MeknugetZz hand?
Okay, yeah, that's what I was talking about. I was gonna say the Fire War Axe is
One-drop
great,
War Axe, Frothing Berserker?
but do you really want to, like, as deckhand as you one-drop?
Yeah. Says
Why?
1 on it. It's just
It
consistency.
says 1 on it, brilliant.
I'm serious. It's consistency. It's an aggro deck. You don't mulligan away 1-drops to try and draw a better 1-drop, especially when you're in a favored matchup. When you're in a more evenly contested matchup or an unfavored matchup, that's when you can start looking for the specific 1-drop you need. But when you're playing in a matchup where you're favored, where you do just want to go 1, 2, 3 and curve out, you just keep the card that says 1 on it.
Okay, here's my question then. How set do you think MeknugetZz was on coining out the weapon that turn?
Not set at all, because he would have had to have potentially seen...
Oh, thank God. Okay, you be quiet for a second.
All right.
Okay, so that's a good card on the far right that MeknugetZz has just drawn. It is exceptionally good when you have 2 deck hands and a weapon equipped. I wouldn't be too surprised if there's actually a hero power pass and then next turn can get funky.
Well, it depends how brave MeknugetZz wants to be in
I'm
this
always
spot,
brave.
because there is a single card or 2 copies of a single card in Alb's deck that punishes just playing the ship's cannon this turn and then hitting the 1/1. That then gives you a lot of downside on the following turn, though, because you don't have a weapon anymore to activate your deck hands.
You never play ship's cannon if there's a chance it can get killed for no value. Genuinely, that's how I play the deck.
I think you're wrong.
Well, you think I'm wrong about a lot of things, so there's not much difference.
I think it's. I don't think you play ship's cannon in this spot.
Okay, okay, we agree on that then.
But I think the statement you just made is far too blanket.
I mean, anything ship's cannon might die to is something probably mulligan for by the opponent, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you wouldn't play ship's cannon in a mirror on turn 2 against the opponent who might equip War Axe, right?
I mean, explain to me the entire context of the hypothetical game we're talking about, Raven.
I'm talking very general rules.
Right.
But would you play ship's cannon on its own with no effects into a turn your opponent can War Axe and has mulliganed for War Axe every single game?
Depends entirely on the rest of my hand.
You have pirates to combo it with next turn.
Then no.
Well, that's this situation, isn't it?
Yeah, but you said never.
Well,
Raven.
pretty much never.
Okay, fine.
If you had a Frothing Berserker, would you? I still don't think I would.
Okay. I don't think this conversation's going anywhere anymore.
It's because I'm right. Anyway, moving on, because, you know, I won, so I can move on. The Frothing Berserker does kind of pose an issue on the board, because it just soaks up a lot of hits more than anything, and it's not a minion that Alb can afford to keep alive. Everything else is kind of rough. The captain will be pulling patches though, so it's a 2/2, so can go into the mini bot, for example, get a trade there, and then just hope that it's enough to start soaking up these 1/1s. But it's a big ask, and then Steadigan as well his next turn would be absolutely huge for Alb.
Yeah, I think the more interesting situation here, while you were prattling on about random absolutes, is that MeknugetZz actually chose to play the ship's cannon and not even kill the 1/1. He actually left it dead on board to what he could see.
Blows my mind.
Which, I mean, I could have seen the line where you kill the 1/1, even though it messed up your deckhand synergy and took the risk against Muster for battle. But to just throw away the ship's cannon into the board, especially when one of the trades was a Divine Shield trade, that looked very, very strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know my thoughts, so I won't go on any longer.
we definitely do, yeah.
That is a great draw, though. The Bloodsail Cultist combining now with a deckhand, just starts making this War Axe more and more and more dangerous. And actually, Alb can refill the board a lot. He can create a lot of minions. doesn't have any buffs, though. You know, there isn't a Quartermaster available.
Nope.
There isn't a Light Fuse. There isn't, you know, anything.
I love this deck so much. Look at the respect. A 2-1 in Pirate Warrior just got traded into a 1-1, and then a 4-damage War Axe charge hits another 1-1.
Look at that, though.
That is the level of respect that you have to give to a Silverhand recruit in this deck.
I actually think you do play this similar the way I would want to play against Token Druid.
Sure.
Right? You just kill stuff, and then the Paladin is actually very limited outside of Tyrion later on to defend.
So in my experience, I did play this Paladin deck a ton in the season where I actually pushed the most time into Wild. I was hanging around top 10 Legend for the majority of the month, and then my experience with the Pirate Warrior matchup is it was really, really bad unless they tried to do that.
Oh, really?
Because if they tried to just kill everything I played, eventually you just say, play Stand Against Darkness. And then you say, well, I have 5 1-1s.
Well, this situation. Right, exactly on screen.
Like, I have way too many dudes on board now for you to trade through. And all of these buffs in my hand that you've been playing around for the whole game, well, now I get to land them anyway, and you haven't pushed enough face damage in the meantime to be able to punish me for it.
Yeah, I guess it's very hand-reliant, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes you can afford to get away with it, and that's what makes a good player. You know, when can you kill these 1-1s? When do you leave them open and go for it? I think that's a very tough call, actually. But now we see the power of the Stellagun and the power of just this deck. Like, as you said, damage wasn't pushed early enough. And I do wonder, I mean, we could see as well, but if that ship's cannon was saved and used for a power play, how does Alb deal with all of that? Like, you know, you're putting pirates onto the board, you're doing damage on the board, and you've got ship's cannon you need to kill.
So here's the thinking, right? Like, MeknugetZz played it in a position where he could have chosen to play around Muster for Battle and trade into a 1-1. But let's say he did nothing, right? And then the Muster for Battle that you're considering playing around comes down anyway. As the game is wrapping up here, it's been over for a number of turns. But in that situation, if Muster for Battle comes down anyway, and your play is Ship's Cannon, play South Sea Deckhand, charging South Sea Deckhand, shoot 2 damage, you're just...
With patches.
With patches as well. You're just clearing up a few 1-1s with that anyway. Like, is that actually a big win for you in that spot?
I think it's the halfway between what we were saying of clearing up 1-1s without having to do anything, because the Ship's Cannon probably kills 2 of them. So then you've not really... And then you can use them and use to push damage and leave the other 1-1s up.
Right.
It's like collateral damage, right? More than anything. You've not committed minions, you've not committed weapon swings, and you can do that to face. Now we can check out the deck as well, just to, you know, we've talked a lot about this deck. This deck we both have played a lot, and the differences to the way the deck works versus the current standard popular Paladin, which
Hang on a minute.
This is great.
When we were comparing anything Paladin with Standard, we used Murloc Paladin as a comparison. And now when we're comparing Doodadin to Standard, we're using Murloc Paladin as a comparison.
I mean, Murloc Paladin's pretty standard.
It is.
It's pretty good.
It's fair. But yeah, builds of this deck do really genuinely interest me. There's a lot of different ones floating around. Of course, Vine Cleaver is a card I brought up. There's also lists that cut equality. There's also, interestingly, lists that keep the equality and actually cut consecration.
Yep.
Because equality is so powerful when you're just constantly having 1-1s on the board. You don't need a sweeper to go alongside it in a lot of situations.
And also as well, we'll talk about tech cards as we move into the next game. If you don't play equality, you lose to Priest. You just lose on ladder to Priest.
Yeah. Tarim.
You get into turn 6. Did you see what Control did yesterday? You know what I mean, though. You actually just died to a Death Lord.
I'm just getting very triggered by your absolute statements this series, Raven.
I mean, it's true. They're fine being absolute statements if they're right. God.
Aggro Druid now coming up against MeknugetZz Mage. And if I remember rightly, it was the Mage that was banned in the first series. It's actually a very interesting list. It's kind of halfway...
Hang on. Actual interesting or cast interesting?
No, actually interesting.
Okay, there we go.
It's kind of halfway between an aggressive tempo mage and kind of a Gunter mage that we see in Standard. It's got Doomsayers and Medivh, Alexstrasza in there, but then also we're seeing Sorcerer's Apprentices, Azure Drakes, Dr. Boom, all of these, you know, more aggressive cards. So it's a very, very interesting mix.
Double Meteor.
Double Meteor, yeah.
I mean, it's a great card. I love it. But 2?
Hey, you gotta kill some 7/7s, dude.
Yeah, Flame Wreath, boom. War Golem.
I remember one of my all-time favorite Hearthstone quotes is when Light Bomb was announced. No one was really quite sure how powerful it was going to be, and Blackout, who was a very prominent UK Hearthstone player back then, We were in a TeamSpeak server with him, and he said, "Oh no, that's a good card. It 1-for-1's Dr. Boom."
And you're like, oh yeah.
I mean, and that's genuinely how powerful Dr. Boom was. Whereas if there was a card that 1-for-1's Dr. Boom,
you're pretty good.
You put it in your deck, right? And Meteor is just in that same category.
Yeah. This list going against the Druid, it does have those benefits of Doomsayer, of Frost Novas. Even the counterspell, there's a one of in the list. And versus Druid, that can actually mess them up a lot because you rely on getting so much value from buff, Savage Roar, so on and so on.
Oh boy.
Flappy Bird.
Fledgling has entered the fray, though, and there's a couple of Frost Novas, and that Mana Worm draw is actually very, very important because Frost Nova almost seems essential this turn. There's just too much damage if that Fledgling starts pushing Wind Fury or if there's a Savage Roar in hand. But just Frost Nova this turn didn't let you deal with even the Fledgling on the following turn. You have no secret in hand to activate the Medivh's Valet, so Mana Worm at least allows you to then get a platform to start trading with the following turn.
Yeah, and also if you go in like really long worst case scenario, you can Mana Worm Frost Nova Scientist, trade Scientist into Courier.
Yes.
Courier.
Medivh's Valet.
Medivh's Valet.
I always do that too.
That's the first time I've ever done that. I think it's just my proximity to you.
You've caught it off me.
Exactly. So
wasn't the first thing.
So even in like 2-3 turns time, you can actually deal with this, even through a buff as well, because you can probably ping it afterwards.
Right.
So there is a way you can do this, and MeknugetZz is just going for it, just for playing for survival at the moment more than anything. Say that all that fancy stuff. Just gonna meteor it on 6, isn't he? It's like, die!
Well, I mean, a lot of that will depend on how Alb positions his minions, really, over the coming turns. Like,
Does it?
Yeah, if it's the choice between meteoring just to kill a 4/4 and another irrelevant minion, as you would in this kind of position, or, doing the Mad Scientist, get a secret, and actually develop a Medivh's Valet on the same turn, then yes, you'd go ahead and valet it instead.
So it's like, I could just imagine a player going, okay, there's the bird on the board. Can't ping it off. I've got Meteor. But there's no minion next to it. I'm just not going to kill it. just let it attack your face from buff health, Wind Fury, go. Sorcerer's Apprentice is a card I kind of generally approve of in almost any major list, though. Because the card is just fantastic.
You said almost.
Yeah.
Better.
I wonder.
No, I said almost, not better. Yeah, I know Viper in Hearthstone Global Games was playing it in an earlier Gunter Mage version. It's just playing one, but you know what? Sometimes one just does work with Glyph, Frostbolts, in your deck. Like, it actually makes stupid things happen.
There's actually the kind of hybrid Freeze Mage deck that's going around right now that's primarily been attributed to Zump because of his DreamHack performance with it. Stan Sifka and Viper and a couple of other players that beforehand have already been experimenting with that kind of build with Sorcerer's Apprentice in it back in the day. So that's kind of the origin story of that deck in this position.
Yeah, and over the course of us chatting about Mage, MeknugetZz' partner is Mage, just pretty much how we said he would go, just with the second Frost Nova and the Mad Scientist. So now he has a guaranteed kill, but now is it more worth to kill 2 minions with the Meteor?
So he could trade the Mad Scientist into the 4/4, get a secret, valet the 4/4 down, develop a Sorcerer's Apprentice and an Ice Block all in the same turn.
It's true.
It's potentially pretty strong, but the Meteor...
This is good,
though. Consolidating the minion on the board, actually, as we were talking before about... Alb did actually position his minions correctly. He had the Fledgling on the extreme right, so if it was the Meteor target, it was not going to get too much work done. But the fact that MeknugetZz consolidated a minion on the board meant that he could Meteor a far better central target and then attack into the fringe of the 4/4 instead.
Mad Scientist getting some work done, but Savage Roar now with the hero power, putting MeknugetZz to 4. But what is very, very important indeed is this Alexstrasza plus second Ice Block.
Yeah.
This is the trick. Unless Alb draws into what, a living mana, then he probably just won't be able to catch up after this Alexstrasza. Because Alexstrasza will go down on MeknugetZ's own face, go up to 15. Even without being behind an Ice Block, you've suddenly got an 8/8. Woo!
Sorry, what was that, Raven? Something living mana?
Alb will draw living mana because I am Raven and I am awesome and I know what's going on. And now suddenly this gets a little bit more tricky, but there are 2 minions that can trade.
Yes.
So, he can start bringing this living mana down. It's not as if he did it into the Alex turn with no other buff.
It's actually very, very important not to trade this turn from MeknugetZz. He must go base. I mean, the hero power is still available, but just
sorry.
The ice block gets procced, sorry, no matter what. But you need to limit this turn in terms of board development from Alb. If you start trading into the minions now, he can actually potentially replace that with even more power on the following turn, and then your Alexstrasza or your ice block turn is threatened even more heavily.
The ice proc gets blocked.
Something like that. I don't know. Words came out. Hopefully they made sense.
This Mark of the Lotus is actually huge, though.
Yes.
Because it's hard to get across, but the difference between 2-2s and 3-3s is bigger than 1. But you know exactly what I mean, which is why I said it's hard to get across, right?
That's why it's funny.
Yeah. But it actually is very, very important. And now suddenly it's going to be not turn 9 Alex because there is just too much damage available on the board. It's going to be Ice Block that will get procced into a ping. And, you know, with minion development now, as long as this isn't a complete...
Oh, boy.
Okay. As long as that's not a complete whiff, which, hey-ho, it isn't. Like, this is just too much, I think, for MeknugetZz now. That living mana draw, the first one, and then especially the Mark of the Lotus was just, well, what do you do?
He has to play it, right? There's only 3, 6, 9, 12, 14 damage now being threatened against Alexstrasza, so he didn't play it? Interesting.
I guess he was just waiting, well, what was he waiting to draw? Because I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, the more linear example is just that both ice blocks have been beaten, right? Oh, the secret's in play, right? That's why he's holding back for fear of counterspell in this spot. The second secret that came down.
Sure, yeah.
I'm dumb. Yeah, I'm dumb. I didn't even see the counterspell get developed or register that there was a second secret in play. So yeah, of course, 100% correct to be holding back. I apologize.
Yeah, the mad scientist pulled it.
Yeah,
that's why. So it's we're not used to cards so powerful that we have to cast and not see the secret played.
Nice excuse.
The mad scientist is so powerful it beats casters at this point. But
patches.
Also as well, something I mentioned yesterday, Finley has just made this game even easier.
Absolutely.
The Hunter hero power is so good versus Mage. The last secret was, of course, as we said, Counterspell. And that is going to be Alb going to be going into the finals versus Control.
Yeah, an incredible performance from him, really coming out of nowhere and putting this one on the board for Europe, but more importantly, for himself. You saw from his stats as well that he's a very, very dedicated wild player as well. He has multiple high legend finishes inside that top 100.